everybody, I'm back again, and we're reading another chapter from my current work. Right now, I'm working on a young adult paranormal series, and it's called Pure by Mesick. And it's a really wonderful novel. I really got into it, honestly, a lot more than I thought I would. It centers around our heroine, Katie, or Ekaterina, as she was known in Russia, where she's originally from. And she's just turned 16, she's doing her normal high school stuff, but all these weird, strange things start happening, and she's not quite sure how to deal with them. She lives with her grandmother because her parents died when she was young. And in the chapter that we're going to be going into today, we're going to get some backstory about her mother, and we're also going to get visited by a very mysterious presence that pops up a lot later in the book as well. So, as always, I will be punching and rolling, so if I make a mistake, which I will, I'm human, they always happen, I will go back and fix it right then, and then pick up where I've left off. So, without further ado, here is Chapter 5 of Pure by Mesick. Chapter 5. I walked home slowly, too worn out from my argument with Therese to think about it. Too much was going on lately, and the strain was starting to wear me down. As I walked, the man from the mirror kept crowding into my thoughts, and try as I might, I couldn't keep them out. Suddenly, I'd had enough. There was one person who might be able to tell me what was going on, even if she didn't want to admit it. I decided I had to talk to GM. I wanted to say with. I decided I had to talk to GM. I had to get some answers from her about my mother's visions. Even if she thought I was crazy. Even if it upset her. I had to know what was going on with me. I walked up to my house and stood staring at it. I suddenly felt nervous. Talking to GM wasn't going to be easy. I went inside. GM? I called, and I hoped my voice didn't sound unsteady. In the kitchen, Katie. I found GM standing at the kitchen table. She was spreading peanut butter on cut up. Ooh. I really try to put D's on the end of weird words. I don't know why. She was cutting up, where is that? Cutting up celery. Yeah, I'm standing at... She was spreading peanut butter on cut up stalks of celery. I'm making a little snack, she said. Would you like some? The scene before me was so normal that I felt tears stinging my eyes. Suddenly, I just wanted things to go back to the way they used to be. No runaways, no strange visitors with dire warnings, no unnerving hallucinations. When I didn't answer, GM looked up and took in the expression on my face. She froze with her knife poised over the celery. What's wrong, Solnishko? I wanted to blurt out everything, but I knew that wouldn't be fair to GM. I knew how sensitive she was about the past. I decided to approach the topic of visions in a roundabout way. If I was... Excuse me. In a roundabout way. If I was lucky, maybe I could convince her to talk. I took a deep breath. GM, do you remember the visitors from Sunday night? GM stiffened. Yes. Are they still here? I mean, are they still in town? No. GM's tone was sharp. I felt frustration welling up within me. This wasn't going well. How do you know they're gone? GM set her knife down with a clatter. I know they are gone because I told them that if I ever saw them again, It's a little low for GM. Excuse me a moment. She needs more breathiness. There we are. I know they are gone because I told them that if I ever saw them again, I would call the police. I told them I would have them arrested for trespassing and making threats. They know better than to stay around here. GM's tone... No, English is hard sometimes. Here we are. GM's tone told me clearly that the subject was closed. I wasn't going to be able to get at the topic of visions by a roundabout route. I would have to try the direct route. I took another breath. GM, I said, I know this is hard for you, but I need to talk to you about these visitors. And my mother's visions. No, GM snapped. Again, I say no. No, I said. No. GM, I need to know. Enough, GM said. Enough. I will not have it. I felt a sudden flash of anger. I'm not 5 years old anymore, I shouted. You can't protect me from everything. Something's happening to me, and I don't know what it is. You have to talk to me. You have to help me. GM stared at me for a long moment. Then she seemed to grow resigned to something. Of course I will help you, Solnishko. I am your grandmother. You only have to tell me what is wrong. I've been seeing things, I said. Things that aren't there. I've been having visions. And I need to know what you know about them. There's no harm in your telling me the truth. GM sighed heavily. Yes, Solnishko. I have always feared that something like this would happen. Let us go and sit down. She led me into the living room and steered me toward the couch. Now tell me what you've seen, GM said. That was just a whole lot of spit going on. Let's not have that. GM said. I quickly ran through all of the times I had seen... I don't know what I wanted to say there. I quickly ran through all of the times I had seen the strange man's face in glass. I stopped short of telling her that I had actually seen the man in person. I didn't want her to worry any more than she was already going to. GM nodded. I believe you, she said quietly. I have heard stories like these before. From your mother. Then you have to tell me what she saw, I said. GM sighed again. I will tell you, though I do so with a heavy heart. Your mother had visions of a man. She saw a man named Gleb Mstislav. I drew in my breath sharply. Is that the man Galina believes killed my mother? GM bowed her head. Yes. And what do you... Yes. And what do you believe about him? I believe Gleb was a very bad person. I believe he was a mobster. I believe he killed a number of people. But not my mother? GM shook her head. No, she died of a fever, Solnishko. I saw it myself. But Galina believes that this Gleb is looking for me now, and that I am in some kind of danger. Yes, but that cannot be. Why not? I asked. You just said yourself that Gleb was a bad man. It cannot be, because Gleb Mstislav is dead. As GM said the words, a strange coldness came over me. I remembered now that she had said the same thing to Galina. GM looked at me sadly. I don't know anything else about what your mother saw. tried to reverse those words. Anything else about what your mother saw? Truly, I do not. But Katie, believe me when I say that you must work to push these visions away. I don't know where they come from, but I do know they aren't good for you. Who is Galena? I asked. Why does she believe that she knows anything about my mother? Galena and your mother were good friends from the time they were small, GM said. Galena, as she grew up, began to believe in the local superstitions of Krov. To my despair, your mother did also. Superstitions? I said. You talked a lot about superstition the night the visitors were here. I remember now that you told Galena that superstition killed my mother. What did you mean by that? GM pursed her lips together. Then she spoke. Your mother had the fever that eventually killed her for many weeks. The doctor had urged her to stay in bed, but Nadia kept sneaking out of the house. She would ramble around town all night, and she was always worse when she returned in the morning. She believed she was fulfilling some kind of mission, stopping some great evil. One morning, Nadia was found out in a petrified forest on the outskirts of Krov. That is the morning her fever won. Nadia was delirious and too weak to survive after that. She only lived a few more days. I often wonder if she would have lived. Excuse me, that was the wrong tone. Oh, days. I often wonder if she would have lived if she hadn't believed that she had to force herself to go out and fight monsters in the dark. What was it that my mother thought she had to do? I asked. I don't know, GM said. I know it had something to do with Gleb, but what it was exactly, I truly don't know. And I firmly believe that there was nothing in it. Your mother had no supernatural calling, and neither do you. Trust me, Solnishko. She gave me a long, level look. I met her gaze. Thanks for telling me all of this, I said quietly. I know how hard this has been for you. GM hugged me tightly then, and in that hug I could feel just how much she feared to lose me. That evening we had a quiet dinner, and afterward I went up to my room to do some homework. But as I worked, my mind kept drifting. I thought of Therese, but I pushed the thought away quickly. Her angry words still stung, even in memory. And there didn't seem to be anything I could do. Even in memory. Right there. Even in memory. And there didn't seem to be anything I could do anyway. I had tried calling and texting her, but she wouldn't answer. I thought then of the man from the mirror, and about what GM had said. She wanted me to forget about the visions I'd had. She wanted me to push them away. But I couldn't do that, not now that they'd become real. So the question was, who was the man from the mirror? Sorry, there's a truck. Okay. Who was the man from the mirror? A possible answer began to form in my mind, and it was a disturbing one. According to GM, there was a great big click on that. I don't want to deal with it. All right. Disturbing one. According to GM, my mother had had visions of Gleb Mstislav. And according to Galena, that same man had killed my mother. And I had been having visions of a strange man. I had to wonder, was I now seeing Gleb Mstislav too? I realized then that it was Of two. I realized then that that was impossible. Gleb was dead, and I had actually seen the man from my visions in the flesh. I had even touched him. So he couldn't be Gleb Mstislav. And then a chill spread through my body. Unless he isn't what he seems, a small voice whispered. A stab of fear lanced through me, and I stood up and went to the window. I opened the curtains and stared out into the darkness. I thought back to the night calling that had plagued me until recently. It occurred to me that the night calling. It occurred to me that the night calling had stopped when the visions had started. And the visions themselves had stopped when the man from the mirror had come to me in person. Though the idea was crazy, I began to wonder if the man from the mirror was setting a trap for me. Entirely unbidden, a question popped into my mind. What if the man from the mirror is Gleb Mstislav, somehow returned from the grave to kill you just like he killed your mother? I took in a deep breath. The idea was completely ridiculous. It just wasn't possible. But it occurred to me that there was a way I could find out. I could ask the man myself. As crazy as it sounded, the man had said he would come if I called him. Say, Katie Wickliff summons you. I decided I would do it. I would call him. I stood very still and listened. GM was still up and would be up for hours. I didn't want her to be around when I tried summoning the man from the mirror, though I wasn't sure why. After all, it probably wouldn't work. How could it? Oh, there's another truck. Okay. We're going to start from after all. There it is. I wasn't sure why. After all, it probably wouldn't work. How could it? Different tone. Sure why. After all, it probably wouldn't work. How could it? There was no way the man could hear me speaking over any distance. The only way he could hear me is if he were hanging around my house at night, hoping I would go outside and call him. And if he did that, he was probably a psycho. I told myself not to think that way. Probably a psycho. I told myself not to think that way. It was only leading me down a different dark path. I resolved to go outside after GM was asleep and call for the strange man. Then, when he didn't show up, I could prove to myself that he was neither vengeful... When he didn't show up, I could prove to myself that he was neither vengeful murderer nor psycho. I sat down at my desk again and forced myself to concentrate on my homework. Time seemed to crawl by, but at long last, I heard GM settle into her room for the night. I waited a little while longer, just to be sure she was asleep, and then I crept out into the night. I stood in my driveway, looking up and down the street. Everything was quiet. There was no one to see my little experiment. Even though it seemed unlikely to me that the man from the mirror was hiding out in my yard, it occurred to me that I really should check, just to be sure. With that in mind, I went over the yard thoroughly with a flashlight. Our house didn't have shrubbery, but it did have a few trees, and I shone my light up into their scantily clad branches. No one was hiding in the trees or anywhere else in our yard that I could see. I even went out to the shed in the back where we kept the lawnmower. No one was in the shed either. Just to be sure I was covering all possibilities, I walked from one end of my street to the other slowly, going over my neighbors' yards with my flashlight. As far as I could tell, no one was hiding on my street. Or if someone was, there was no way he was hiding out close enough to my house to hear me speak. I returned to my yard and went to the back to stand under my bedroom window. Feeling slightly foolish, I glanced around me one last time and prepared to summon the strange man from the mirror. There's no way this'll work, I told myself. Heyo, got a lot of traffic today. Thankfully, they're showing up when I need to get rid of spit, so that's, good timing at least. Okay. I took a deep breath. Then, in a whisper, I spoke the words he had told me to say. Katie Wickliff summons you. There was a ripple in the air around me, and then a short, sharp breeze. The man from the mirror was suddenly standing before me, his face pale in the dim light. He grasped me by the wrist. He grasped me. This is going to take a few times, I can tell. He grasped me by the wrist. He grasped me by the wrist. What is it? He demanded. What's wrong? Without waiting for a reply, he pulled me away from the house. Is he here? I was stunned. All I could do was stare up at him. Katie, answer me, he said urgently. How did you get here? I stammered. I searched my yard. I searched the street. You weren't there. You weren't anywhere. You couldn't possibly have heard me. His grip on my wrist tightened. Is he here? Who? I asked. He looked toward the house. Gleb Mstislav. I forced myself to focus. No matter how the man had gotten here, I had called him for a reason. Gleb Mstislav, the man repeated. Is he here? You tell me, I said. He blinked and then stared at me, puzzled. What are you talking about? Tonight, my grandmother told me that my mother once had visions of Gleb Mstislav, and I've been having visions too. Visions of you. And then today you suddenly appeared to me in the flesh. So who are you? Are you Gleb Mstislav? Have you returned to haunt me just as you haunted my mother? The man seemed startled by my words. No, I am not Gleb Mstislav. Then who are you? I demanded. My name is William, he said. William Surser. Anyone can make up a name, I said. How do I know you aren't Gleb? Because I am here to kill him, William replied. My grandmother told me he's already dead. He is. I felt a chill steal over me. How can you kill someone who's already dead? That's not something you need to worry about. If he's dead, I said, is he a ghost? No. Then what is he? That's not something you need to worry about either. I looked down. You're still holding my wrist, I said. William's hand moved, and he wrapped his fingers around mine. His skin was warm, and his palm pleasantly calloused. I felt a tingle run through me where his fingers touched. All that spit is really gross. Really, really gross.
Tell me more about your visions,
William said. It was a difficult subject. It was a difficult subject to start in on, and I was feeling strangely lightheaded. I saw you in the bathroom mirror, I said slowly.
William's lips twitched into a half smile. I was in the girls' bathroom.
I saw you before that, in my mirror here at home. You were standing behind me. When I turned around, you weren't there. I saw you again in the side mirror of my grandmother's car, and in a TV screen. I even saw your face once as I reached for a glass. I kept seeing you everywhere.
And what did you think?
He asked quietly. It was frightening at first.
And now?
Not so much. You're much more pleasant in person. I thought I saw a reddish tinge suffuse William's face, but in the dim light, I couldn't be entirely certain. Heyo. Oh, traffic. Time for a water break. Okay, I think we're good. And be entirely certain.
You mentioned your mother,
William said.
You said she had visions of Gleb. Why didn't you ask her to describe him? Gleb and I are nothing alike. I'm sure she could have told you that.
My mother died years ago, I said. I'd always been told she died of a fever, but Galena said a man killed her. She didn't say his name when she visited us, but tonight my grandmother told me that Galena believes Gleb was the man responsible. William nodded once, and his face took on the same harsh lines that I'd had seen. That's good, right? We'll go to there. William nodded once. Where are you, William? Nodding. There we are. William nodded once, and his face took on the same harsh lines that I had seen when he'd first appeared in my mirror.
I don't want to alarm you, he said, but I have to tell you the truth. Your life may be in danger. Promise me you won't go anywhere alone at night. You're safe enough during the day, but at night you need to be very, very careful.
The tone of his voice made me shiver. What do you mean I'm in danger? He shook his head.
I can't tell you. I've got to go now, but you'll see me again.
He glanced around.
You should go inside now.
William was still holding my hand, and he began to pull me back toward the house. I followed him. You know, you may think you're helping me by not telling me anything, but you're actually making the fear worse.
You wouldn't believe me even if I could tell you, William replied.
We walked up to the house, and he released my hand.
Go on in, William said. I'll stay until I see the door close behind you.
Though I was strangely unwilling to go, I turned toward the door.
Wait just a moment,
William said. I turned back toward him.
You summoned me here thinking that I might be the person who killed your mother.
Yes, I replied.
Why? He asked. Why would you do something so dangerous? Why would you summon your mother's killer?
I called you because I didn't want it to be true, I said. A smile twitched at one corner of William's lips. I was still thinking of that half smile when I fell asleep. And there we go. That is chapter 5 of Pure. So hopefully it'll be out soon and you can listen to the whole thing, and this will be edited with no weird swallows or trucks rolling around in the background. Thanks for coming, guys. See you next time. Bye.